war, terrorism and surrogacy. It's an unlikely trio grouped together by Pope Francis, who overnight called for a universal ban on the practice.
Un bambino è sempre un dono.
A child is always a gift and never the basis of a commercial contract, he says in a speech listing the ills threatening human dignity and global peace. The pontiff labelling surrogate pregnancies despicable.
I don't feel that that's the case. I think it's a beautiful way to have a family, and having been a surrogate myself, it's a beautiful gift to be able to give people.
The Pope's comments reigniting a debate over the ethics of surrogacy. An unborn child must not be turned into an object of trafficking, he said.
Some people believe that when we bring money into a surrogacy arrangement, there's a heightened chance that people might agree to it because they're desperate for the money. We have the issue of exploitation or potential coercion. Someone might feel pressured into being a surrogate.
In Australia, only altruistic surrogacy, where no money changes hands, is legal. Many instead paying vast sums to surrogates overseas in countries like Mexico, Colombia, Cyprus, Greece and the US.
You'd be looking at least $100,000 in some of the cheaper countries. It's a very expensive process. These are very wanted children.
And globally, the surrogacy industry is booming, expected to reach $129 billion US by 2032, as women postpone pregnancy until later in life and same-sex couples look to start a family.
I believe women should be able to use their bodies for paid work. Being able to use our bodies to grow that baby is something that we should be able to have choice over.
Surrogacy, a practice that has transformed countless lives around the world, but one that is also fraught with potential heartbreak and exploitation. So, where does the balance lie?
Stephen Page is a fertility and family lawyer. He's also a father through surrogacy. Stephen, the words used by the Pope were despicable, deplorable. What do you make of them?
Well, I think it's a bit rough that a bunch of old men who've never wanted to have kids and live in the Vatican want to tell others about how to have kids. It's a bit rich. The Catholic Church has a bit of a problem with women and children. It should put its own house in order first before lecturing others.
Stephen, there are legitimate concerns, however. There is some exploitation. So how then do we protect the rights of surrogates and also the babies?
Well, it's really a question of regulation. What we've seen, Australia saw about a dozen years ago that prohibition doesn't work, never has. The only way that you can actually prohibit surrogacy is to have the state regulating the bedroom, and we know that doesn't work. So we've got to have this balance of regulation. Australia, the debate for the last dozen years or so has been the form of that regulation. But what we've seen in Australia is that for every child born here through surrogacy, 3 are born overseas. So it's imperative on us and the Hague Convention, the Hague Conference on Private International Law, which has been looking at a convention for the last 10 years or so, have a convention in place of the right kind so that children's rights can be protected.
Stephen, you know what you're talking about because you've had a child through surrogacy. What was your experience like?
Well, mine was particularly rough. My husband and I were lucky enough to do it in Brisbane, so we were the exception rather than the rule. But our first pregnancy was a miscarriage. The second was ectopic, which is very, very rare, but it happened. And the third one worked, but our daughter almost died in childbirth. Thankfully, she didn't. And she's, as the Pope said, she's a gift.
Stephen, a lot of the exploitation concerns, they centre around commercial surrogacy, but I guess the flip side could also be true. If women aren't compensated, then they can also be exploited?
Yeah, look, I think that's right. And, you know, who would want to have the risk of death? That's what we've got. We're talking about childbirth. There's some maternal mortality risk. Who would want to do that unless they're absolutely committed to the process? And there aren't many women like that, or they're committed to the people that they know, their relatives or friends. So the result is that we have the vast majority of our children born overseas. We should be looking at freeing up the process, and an obvious way of doing that is to allow agencies, surrogacy agencies in Australia. Canada has them. Canada's an altruistic regime like us, but having that agent between the surrogate and the parents means we have much less chance of what we've been seeing, which is surrogates complaining long and loud in Australia about intended parents who have deep pockets but short arms.
So does that mean that it's sort of decoupling surrogacy from I guess, the views of the church and people of faith?
Not at all. I think surrogacy, well done, is a magical process. And I've had the privilege of acting for many clients who have been of faith. And for them, you know, to have, in their views, God preventing them from having children. And here we can take advantage of science and medicine and the generosity of others, namely egg donors and surrogates, is just a miracle in the making. And we're so lucky to be able to do this. Done well, surrogacy is magical. I just reject the Pope saying that all surrogacy is bad. It's not.
Stephen, we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.